She didn't let voters forget it. Now, Peter Dutton doesn't think that that's going to affect his vote, but all it really needs is a couple of hundred people to have been offended by that, I guess, perception that he tried to shop around for something better, and the seat could change hands.
Thanks for that, Kieran. I imagine if the swing is on away from Labor, then he won't miss it either. Thanks. In New South Wales, there are at least 9 Labor seats in play, and we'll take a quick look now at a few of them. Eden Monaro is the perennial bellwether seat since 72 at the southern New South Wales electorate, has fallen to the party that has won government. Sitting MP Mike Kelly's margin of 2.3% makes this a seat the Liberals will be desperate to win with David Gazard. Bennelong, one of the most intriguing contests in the nation. In 2007, Maxine McHugh famously wrestled it away from John Howard and the Liberal Party, and they've thrown everything at Bennelong to win it back tonight with their own high-profile candidate, former tennis professional John Alexander. With a margin of 1.4%, it's extremely vulnerable for Labor. There's Macarthur in Sydney's western suburbs, been held by Liberals' Pat Farmer, who's now retired. A redistribution has tentatively given Macarthur to Labor by an ultra-thin 0.5%, a tiny firewall for Labor's Nick Bleasdale with which to fend off the Liberals' Russell Matheson. And at 0.3%, Macquarie, in and around the Blue Mountains west of Sydney, is Labor's most marginal seat. The sitting member, Bob Debus, is retiring at this election, and the contest here becomes more interesting because the sitting Liberal member in nearby Greenway, Louise Marcus, is now contesting Macquarie after a discouraging redistribution in her old seat. And Louise Marcus joins me now. How are you feeling? Not only how has the campaign gone, but what has the mood been around the booths today?
It's been very mixed, Kerry. I'm quietly confident. In some parts of the electorate, extremely positive. Other parts of the electorate, it's very hard to tell at this stage. It'll be a very, very tight result.
Now, what would you pinpoint as the key issue or issues that will decide this result tonight?
There are a number of issues that are really critical both to people in the Blue Mountains and the Hawkesbury, Kerry. 2 key ones that have probably been a standout. One is roads and rail, and the challenge with people competing with freight. People in the mountains in particular and in the Upper Hawkesbury want to see freight moving off their roads and into rail. The second issue, which is extremely important to the whole electorate, is access to health services.
Now, to what extent have you seen evidence of a bleeding of the New South Wales Labor brand across to Julia Gillard's federal Labor?
Bit early to tell at this stage, Kerry, but what people in New South Wales are saying to me is that they've really had enough of Labor. They don't trust them, and they do question, particularly with what has happened with Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard now being installed, that this may be exactly what New South Wales Labor have done, and that federal Labor are doing the same thing.
And very quickly, are you feeling good about tonight? When it really comes down to it, do you think you're going to win?
We'll have to wait till it's all counted. I have to say, Kerry, it's too close to call. You know, I've fought hard. Can I just thank Kerry, my team? I've just had a wonderful selection of volunteers, and my team behind me have been great. They're all behind me now, I think, and they've been wonderful. I want to thank them. It's been a team effort. I hope that the result is positive both for us and the nation.
Good on you. Thanks, Louise Marcus, and we may talk to you later
Pleasure.
in the night. Thank you.
Thanks, Kerry.
Okay. Now, we're going to take the opportunity to look at a few seats. We mentioned earlier Corangamite in Victoria, which is potentially one of the vital seats tonight. This is a seat that's held by Labor, by Darren Cheeseman. It's around southern Geelong and the coast west of Melbourne, and he's got it on a very slender margin of 0.9%. Now, there's only 0.8% of the vote counted, Anthony, but is it telling us anything?
Yes, we've got a number of booths in now. At this stage, these are the smaller rural areas, and Sarah Henderson is well ahead at this stage on 61.8, Darren Cheeseman on 28.5. But be aware, they're raw numbers. The next graphic, we compare those figures with the figures in the same booths last time, which brings the contest in closer. 4.6% swing, which at this stage we're saying the Liberal Party's ahead. We're not giving the seat away. So at this stage, Darren Cheeseman and Sarah Henderson, good first figures in three preference count booths there for Sarah Henderson, but certainly not enough to give the seat away.
Now we're going to jump to the other end of the country in the seat of Leichhardt in North Queensland, which takes in Cairns, from Cairns to Cape York. This was held for some time by Warren Inch for the Liberals. Jim Turner won it at the last election. He's currently sitting on a margin of 4.1%, but Warren Inch is back contesting it for the Liberal National Party.
And he's well ahead on these. He's ahead on these primary votes. These are from a number of places up in the Torres Straits, so they're not actually representative. 80% of the electorate is in Cairns, so it's an electorate where you'll have to wait for those later figures to come in. But if we factor in that that's from Torres Strait Island, 56.2, it's a 10% swing. We've got it marked as an LNP gain. As I said, I'm not convinced that they're actually representative booths at this stage. So Leichhardt, we've shown Warren Inch being returned at this stage. I'd be prepared to wait a little bit longer on those figures. OK, now we'll take a look at the seat of Flynn moving down the coast from Cairns to central Queensland, based largely around Gladstone. Now this was taken by Chris Trevor for Labor at the last election. He's sitting on a margin of 2.2%, with 2.8% of the vote counted. Anthony, this is potentially an interesting seat tonight. Well, at this stage, this one isn't swinging like Leichhardt. Ken O'Dowd is ahead. This is a very diverse electorate. It's got Gladstone in it, it's got mining towns, and it's got rural communities. Chris Trevor's well behind on these figures. Again, we've got 2 candidate preferred counts in 7 of the 10 booths in this electorate, and that's factoring in a swing of 1.3%, which is not enough for Labor to lose the seat at this stage. Again, we haven't given that away. That's only Labor Party ahead, but that's quite a different first figure than we saw in Leichhardt. At this stage, we'll be coming back to Flynn later in the evening. All
right, well now we'll jump to the seat of Ford, which takes in the outer southern areas of Brisbane. Well, this was won by Brett Raguse for Labor, again at the last election, part of the Rudd swing. He sits on a margin of 3.4%. Now, just a small amount of the vote counted.
Well, this was a massive swing at the last election. We have only 2 booths. Both of them are joint booths on the border with Ford, which always makes you slightly concerned because joint booths can attract some different sort of votes. 19% there for the Greens. That's a very big vote. Again, very small. No, they're very small numbers. There's only a couple of hundred votes here, and that's a 20%. I've actually got later figures than that, and the margin, the LNP is still ahead. But no, I think we'll discount that one for the moment. That's a little bit too early to call.
OK, so we'll be patient with Ford for a little while. But we're going to go back up now to the seat of Dawson, which is around Mackay and central Queensland again, but north of Gladstone. We've got, again, James Bidgood was the Labor member here. He held it in 2007, but he's retiring. Ostensibly, it's a margin of 2.6% to Labor.
Well, Mike Brunker's the new Labor candidate. George Christensen is on Mackay City Council. Mike Brunker is the Mayor of Whitsunday. At this stage, he's well behind. These are, again, very early figures. I wouldn't put a mammoth or 11% swing on. I think that's done on one tiny booth from Bloomsbury, which is at the back of Mackay from memory. So again, that's a very early call. Again, we're seeing 3 sweet swings in big swings in some seats and then 1 not in another. So you do have to wait for a while on these early figures. But we are seeing quite a swing in Queensland at this stage.
OK, we'll come back to Brisbane. This is the inner This is actually the seat of Brisbane in the inner suburbs, held by one of Kevin Rudd's, now Julia Gillard's ministers, Arch Bevis. He's held it since 1990 and he's sitting on a margin of 4.6%. We've actually got 3.4% of the vote counted.
The interesting here, Teresa Gambaro is the Liberal candidate. She's the former member for Petrie. Also interesting in this is Andrew Bartlett, the former Democrat senator, who's running as a Green. Now, we have 3 first preference booths there. Clayfield, the divisional returning officers, postal votes, and Stafford West. So they're a combination of booths. It's a swing of 7.7%, and at this stage, that's not indicating it's not giving it away, and that's correct. It's not a seat you can give away yet, but they're very early figures in that stage. That's, again, a big vote for the Greens there.
OK, well, let's try and get some sense of what's going on around. Let's take a look at the state picture, Anthony, with our state swing graphic.
Okay, what we're seeing so far, the first graphic we're looking at is Queensland. We're seeing a swing of 6% in Queensland, not quite as big as Newspoll was reporting this morning, but 6% if Uniform would deliver 10 seats to the Liberal Party, to the new LNP in Queensland. So that's a big swing that's going on there in Queensland. Compared to that, let's have a look at New South Wales.
But bearing in mind at the same time, it's going to depend how that, what the pattern of that swing is.
It does depend whether it's uniform or not, and it does depend where the votes are from.
Yeah.
At this stage, we have early figures mainly from country areas.
Okay.
4.2% is the swing in New South Wales. That's in line with the polls this morning, which puts in line there. We'll see how those seats fall, but that's, again, that swing could be very patchy. We won't know that for a while, how that's going.
Okay, we might take a look at the Victorian picture as well.
The Victorian swing, 1.1% is the swing to the Liberal Party at the moment. Again, there's a lot of rural figures in these. There's not many Melbourne figures in these early figures. So the pattern is bigger in New South Wales and Queensland, smaller in Victoria. But at this stage of the evening, they tend to be heavily biased towards country votes.
Okay, we might just tap into some of our other experts on Tony Jones's panel now, George Brandis and Penny Wong. Tony?
Yes, George Brandis, looking at these early figures, I know that you were actually campaigning or on a booth in Brisbane, the electorate of Brisbane this morning. Yeah. I mean, what's your feeling looking at these very early figures and the swings that are being indicated?
Well, let me issue the usual caveat that these are very early figures and one doesn't want to extrapolate too far from them. All I can tell you, Tony, from all of the field evidence or the anecdotal evidence this morning is a view common, I might say, to both Labor and Liberal booth workers in Brisbane, was that there was a movement of some dimension against the Labor Party in that seat. Now, the early figures that you've just put up show a swing of 7.7%. I suspect that will come back a bit.
We saw the Newspoll earlier today show a massive decline in Labor's primary vote in the course of 1 week.
Yeah.
What could be happening if this swing is on?
Well, one thing you've got to remember about the Queensland electorate, Tony, is that it does tend, when it makes up its mind, to shift quite sharply. And I think there was a palpable sense, certainly in and around Brisbane in the past week, of the momentum being with my side and away from the Labor Party. Now, to what extent that will continue into today, to what extent that will continue up the coast in some of those coastal seats, I'm not in a position to predict, but certainly we are cautiously confident of a good result in Queensland.
Let's go to Penny Wong. I mean, what sense are you getting? I mean, the Newspoll figures must have been a huge shock to anyone look, but admittedly quite small samples.
Oh well, look, we know we're in for a tough fight. It's been a very tough election campaign, and as Julia said, it's going to be a pretty close finish. We've certainly got some issues in Queensland, and I think we know that our members there are in for a tough fight, and the question is how big is the swing and where is it? Obviously, if it's not uniform and we can hold a range of our marginals in Queensland, then that's a good thing for the government.
It's an open question we'll have to find out about. Let me ask you this. We just heard from Heather Hewitt, who's down in the seat of Melbourne, which is Lindsay Tanner's old seat, and she's saying Labor's pretty much given it away to the Greens, so the Greens will get one definite seat from in the House of Reps, first time ever. Adam Bant, Green MP.
Well, I think it's pretty early to be declaring a seat won or lost, but I think there's no doubt Melbourne is a very tough fight. We've got a great candidate, Kath Botel, a woman who's been one of the lead champions against work choices and helped work on delivering the Fair Work Act. She's an outstanding member of the Labor movement, but she's had a very tough campaign. We've seen, obviously, Lindsay's retirement and the personal vote there. And of course, throughout this campaign, throughout all of the polls, we've seen a very significant increase in the Green primary vote. Obviously, Melbourne is one of the seats where that matters.
Do you accept the Greens are capitalising on Labor's backflip on climate change action? I mean, you're the minister after all.
Well,
I mean, are you feeling any sense of responsibility at this early stage?
It is ironic, isn't it, that a party who voted with Tony Abbott to sink the carbon pollution reduction scheme may well benefit from that. And obviously also in Melbourne, the Liberal Party is choosing to preference the Greens as well. So that makes it a tough seat for us to hold in the circumstances. But Kath's a great candidate.
Okay, we've got two senators here, so I'm going to go to the Senate. We haven't talked about that yet, but of course the Greens hope to hold the balance of power in the Senate. It's a really